Good evening and welcome back to the question and answer series for anash.org. Question. My kid that is 2 years old touched a challah this morning before na'gel waaser. Do I need to throw it out? The answer is no. You could use it according to the Alter Rebbe. Chazal were very strict on the Indian of Riyach Hatuma, which lays on the hands of a person after he sleeps. And it goes away only after washing your hands 3 times. And they also write, and the Gemara says that you shouldn't touch your eyes, your ears, your nose, your mouth before you wash the hands, because the ruach which is on your hand will go on your face or on your eyes. And chamir eskante me'isira. It's a skana, and a skana you have to be more careful than a thing which is osir. So Chazal said you have to watch not to touch anything before you wash your hands. Now the Primogudim Siman Dalet, Mishbetzazu Sifkut Zayin, writes that also children, you have to be careful to wash their hands. And he asks, I don't know why people are not careful when it comes to children to wash their hands, and you have to be careful to wash their hands every day, because chamir eskante mesira. A thing which is dangerous, you have to be more careful than a thing which is osir. So we see first of all that children, you should also wash your hands. The Alter Rebbe writes in Siman Dalet, in the Madira Tenyuna. The Alter Rebbe wrote the first 4 Simonim twice. And in the Madira Tenyuna, he elaborated more with the Tam and with the Apikabola, and he writes over there that you could be lenient on a goy which touches things without washing your hands. Why? Because he says the Riyach Hatima is only resting on a vessel, on a kli which is holy after the kedusha goes away. That means a Jewish body which is holy, and it goes to sleep, so the kedusha goes away, so to speak. So then the Ruach Hatuma could rest on his body. So therefore in the morning, when he gets back his neshama, he should wash his hands, because the Ruach Hatuma looks to rest on kalim, on vessels, on gifim, which was kedusha and which went away. So a goy which is not kedusha at all to begin with, so therefore the Ruach Hatuma does not seek to rest on his hands and on his body, and therefore they don't have to wash their hands. So the Alter Rebbe adds on, and that's the reason why you could be lenient children before they came to the age of chinuch, which is about 6 years old. You could be lenient, and the Alter Rebbe writes, because the Iker Knesses Nefesh HaKedusha in a person, the main neshama goes into a person only when he turns 13 years old by his bar mitzvah, or bas mitzvah by a girl, 12 years old. And therefore, only then they are mechiyev to do mitzvahs. So the Alter Rebbe writes, before that, a little bit, a part of the neshama goes in to the person, when he starts to have chinuch of Torah mitzvahs. So therefore, a child which is lower than chinuch, a 2 years old child, the Ruach Hatuma does not seek to rest on him that much, because he doesn't have the kedusha that much. So therefore the Ruach Hatuma doesn't go on him that much. But he finishes Hanizir Menegis Hakut, the person which is careful that a child should wash his hands and shouldn't touch things, kudish yumar. That means he gives a blessing and says that he's holy. So from Alter Rebbe we see, leketchila, you have to be careful to wash a child from the day he goes into the bris, from the 8th day. The minig is even less than that, but at least from the bris, you should wash his hands. But the evet, if a child touched something, if he's under 6 years old, you could be lenient and you don't have to throw it away. Now there are things like fruits, vegetables, which you could wash off. So you wash it 3 times. This steht in the Paskim. But a chalik, which you cannot wash, you could be lenient and you could use it with the evet. And this is also how the Shalas Yeshivas Kerl and Duvet in the first Simon, he brings down the Alter Rebbe and he's makel and is lenient when a child touched food and it cannot be washed, that he could use it with the evet. Follow-up question from last week. In the last shiur you talked about sleeping with shoes. What if a child falls asleep for a nap in the stroller or the like with shoes on? Should we take off the shoes? Not necessarily, you don't need, because the poskim say that a shinas arai, a temporary sleep, it's not a problem. The Gemara says that in Masechta Shabbos Kif Yud Beis Amud Aleph, that the kesher, the ushkupe, if a person makes this kind of kesher in Shabbos, it's potter aval osur. That means it's not permitted to do such a kesher, but it's not iser deraisa. And the Bes Yosef V'Simashin Zayin brings down the Sefer HaTruma. What kind of kesher is it? He says is the Talmidei Chachumim used to put on their shoes and make a kesher, a knot in the shoes, and they did not take off the shoes. They used to sleep with their shoes, and they didn't take it off mishabbos l'shabbos. This is the pshat from the Sefer HaTruma of kesher ushkefe. So the question goes, how could they sleep all the way from mishabbos l'shabbos? That means they slept with their shoes. A person cannot be up 6 days in a row. So they slept with their shoes. How could they sleep with the shoes? The Gemara says that if you sleep with the shoes, it's like toims on tamisa. So the Ta'afas Reim, it's a perish on Sefer Yerayim, Simar Aisha Nalat writes that since the Talmidei Chachumim only sleep on small segments, that means they don't sleep during the night. They're up during the night and they fall asleep a bit here. So therefore, it's a shinas arai. And by shinas arai, it's not a problem to sleep with the shoes, and it's mutter. And this is also how the Shal Shivas Pas Sotchu in Simalam Zayin says that whenever it's a shinas arai, it's not a night sleep, then it's not a problem. So going back to the question, to your question, a child falls asleep in a stroller, it's a nap, it's a shinas arai, so you don't need to take off the shoes. Question: I always put on my tefillin and remove them standing. Can I start doing it sitting because I feel weaker? If yes, do I have to be matan neder? The Alter Rebbe in Siman Chof Hei Sid Chof Zayin writes, Yesh Omrim, that you should put the tefillin shaliyad, you should put on when you sit, and tefillin sharash you should put on when you are standing. So the shaliyad when you are sitting, and the shaliyad when you are standing. This is how it says in Zohar, and this is what it says in the Mugnavruam also. Sif Kut Neches, Tatra brings it down. This is how it's according to Kabbalah. But he adds, Avol Medinas Aili, in our Medinas, in our countries, the minig is that you put on both when you stand. So the Alter Rebbe says, so we have two minugam. The minig of Kabbalah that you should put on the shaliyad when you sit, and only the sherosh you should stand. The minig in our Medinas is you stand by both. In the Alter Rebbe writes, V'yirai shemayim yoitzi eskilam. That means he does both. What does he do? That means he puts on the shaliyad on his hands when he sits, but the bracha and when he makes the kshira, that should be when he stands. So the Alter Rebbe wants to go according to both shittas. Put the tefillin shaliyad on your hands when you're sitting. Once you make before making the bracha, stand up, and from over there you should stand. This is what the Alter Rebbe writes in Shulchan Aruch. But when it comes to the siddur, so the Alter Rebbe writes only this minig of the Zohar. That the minig is that you put the tefillin shaliyad when you are sitting, like it says in the Zohar, and also they make the bracha when they are sitting. So he doesn't bring the hacharua, which he said that you should put it on and by the bracha to stand up. He brings down only the minig of putting on shaliyad when you are sitting and the sharash when you are standing. Minig chavad bepoil, how you do it actually. So the Rebbe writes in the Rishimas, choveres kufni involved. The Rebbe writes like this: tefillin shaliyad l'rabim. That means how the public should do. Everything should be ba'amida. Everything should be when you're standing. The bracha, the putting it on. So the Rebbe says that the minig in public, that means the public minig, the minig, not the Rabbaim's minig, is you do everything when you're standing. The Rabbaim and also the Zikna Chsidim, they do it like the Alter Rebbe writes in the Siddur, as the it's written in Rishimas Rabash Umad Samach Bais. The Rebbe Nishmusai, the Rebbe Rashab used to sit by putting on the tefillin and also making the bracha when he was sitting, and he was only standing up when it comes to tefillin shel rosh. So this is by putting on tefillin. Taking off the tefillin, steht in Shulchan Aruch that the taking it off has the same halacha of putting it on. So according to the Zohar, the shel rosh, you have to stand when you take it off. Shaliyad, you could sit. So when it comes to your question, you're weak, you're not bekoich to stand. Since it's a minik, which Alter Rebbe brings down in Siddur, that you could put tefillin shaliyad when you are sitting, and the same will go also to removing it. So you could do this minik, that by putting it on and by removing it when it's shaliyad, you could sit, and the shel rosh you should stand. So lemaise, if you want to do the minig like the Rabbaim and Zikna Chsidim, that you should sit by putting it on the shaliyad, and the shel rosh you should stand. And the same thing will be by taking it off. If you need a Torah Nedurim, no, you don't need a Torah Nedurim. Since you are now accepting a minig, which is a minig of Makabulam, which is written in Alter Rebbe Siddur, you could start doing this minig, and you don't have to make a Torah Nedurim. Question: when it comes to Kriyas HaTorah, do you need to listen to the Kriya if you already heard? For instance, if you're in the same room and you are being mashlim the minyan, do you need to listen or not? Would the same din apply in 770 where there's many minyanim going at the same time? Now the answer is, when it comes to you are mashlim the minyan, that means you are part of the 10 people, for sure you have to listen to Kriyas HaTorah, because Kriyas HaTorah has to be when there's 10 people, 6 people which never heard Kriyas HaTorah, and the rest 4 could be people who heard already Kriyas HaTorah. But at least has to be 10 people by Kriyas HaTorah. You are mashlim the minyan, you should listen to the Kriya also. When it comes to 770, that means there's all kind of minyanim, you are standing over there, and you're not part of the minyan, you're not mashlam the minyan, so you don't need to listen to Kriyas HaTorah because you heard already before the other minyan. Kemuvan in Poshet that it's also to speak when there's Kriyas HaTorah, even though that you listened already, you heard already, because that's a zilzal in the Torah, that's a zilzal in the davening to talk then. But if you're not talking, if you want to learn, or if you want to daven and say Tillam, and you are basically not part of the minyan, you're not mashlam the minyan, you don't need to listen to Kriya. If you are part of the minyan, you're mashlam the minyan, you should listen to the Kriyas HaTorah. Question. Can you please clarify the topic of lace top sheitlech? You had mentioned that it's problematic due to maras ayin. I was told that a man cannot say duvish begdisha if a woman is wearing such a sheitel. What happens if one of my guests is wearing it? Do I have a problem with making kiddush? So, as I mentioned in the previous shiurim, wearing a lace top sheitel is osur. As I mentioned, because you cannot see that it is hair, so there is maras ayin, people will think that you don't cover your hair and you're over of Issa Daraisa. And as Moshe Feinstein writes in Igros Moshe, Even Ezer Chalik Bais, Sifyid Bais, that only if a person could see when he stands close to the sheitel, he could see that it's a sheitel and it's not hair, it's mutter to go. And if it's a sheitel that even when you stand close, you cannot realize and recognize that it's a sheitel, there's a problem of maras ayin. But to say that it's a duver sheba erve and you cannot say a duver sheba gdisha in front of it, there's no such a thing. Because a erve is only hair which is connected to your head. And as the Shilta Geboirem, which is the main matter on Sheitlech, writes in Shabbos Daf Choftes Amud Aleph, when he writes the heter of Sheitlech, he writes that a person could wear a sheitel, and even if it's human hair, it's still mutter if it's a sheitel. And he says, Sar be'isha erve is only hair which is connected to your flesh. It's connected to your head. And you could see the hair together with the head. So, again to your question, there is no problem to saying a duvish b'kedisha, making kiddush, making a bracha, davening in front of a person who wears a lace top sheitel. But you have to know for sure that it's a lace top sheitel, it's not hair. But if you know, if the person told you so, that it's a lace top sheitel, there's not a problem of duvish b'erve in saying duvish b'kedisha in front of that person, although the person does a isser by wearing it. Question. Do we make a shechiyonu when you purchase a house? It's a machlokes hapoiskim, and therefore you should not make a bracha, a shechiyonu. If you really want to make a shechiyonu, if you're really excited, then you should purchase and buy a suit, a new kapata, a new baguette, and you should make a shechiyanu on that and have in mind also the house. Because the poskim bring down from the Shal Sashivas Lev Chaim, Reb Chaim Pelagi, Chele Gimel Siman in Bais, which he says that a person buys a house and he doesn't pay it right away, he buys it on loan, even though he's going to pay off the loan in a short period of time. That means even if he loans the money only in a month or two, he cannot make a shechiyonu. Why? Because since when he purchased the house, it's not his house, he still has some kind of loan on it, and by the time he pays off the loan, it's no simcha anymore. We see the same thing in Orech HaShilchon also, by the way. He says, why don't we make a shechiyonu when you marry your spouse? And he says, because when you make the Kiddushin, the Eirisen, once upon a time the Eirisen was not in the same time as the Nisuin. They used to make Kiddushin, and then once later they used to make the Nisuin, the wedding. So he says, when you make the Eiresen, you're still not married. So it's not the Simcha that much, and therefore you don't make a Shechionu. When you marry, you don't make a Shechionu because you made the Eiresen before. So therefore, the same will apply also to a house. When you buy the house, there is still a mortgage. So you cannot make a Shechionu, it's not a real Simcha. And when you finish paying the mortgage, you have the house already 30 years or 50 years. So therefore, the post can say not to make a Shechionu. This is also how the Ketzois HaShulchan writes in Simon Samach Dalet, Sif Koten Gimel, in Shal Shivas Bayer Moshe, Chalik Ches Simon Samach Ches, that you should not make a bracha. Now, the Tzitz Eliezer in Chalik Yud Beis Sif Yites, he disagrees and he says that has nothing to do with when you finish paying the mortgage. Chazal said when you buy a house means when you purchase it, then you make the bracha, and therefore he holds that once you sign contract, you make closing, you make a shechionu, although you have a mortgage. But the poskim do not agree with him, and therefore you should not make a bracha, sufag baruchas lehukel, and if you really want to make a bracha, you should buy a new baget, and you could make a shechionu on the baget together with the house. Okay? Thanks for joining us, and please join us again next week and send in the questions to inbox@anash.org. Good night and have a wonderful week.